I came home because my brother was sick. He had cancer. He died. I lost my job. I lost my father. I then lost my home, and I lost my mother after 14 months of being her sole carer. Shall we have some tea? You know me, there's always time for tea. I thought it'd be nice if you and I had a sit down together and a little chat. I'm here with Chaucer in the turret salon. Today, I thought rather than talk history and do lots of trips, I thought I'd just chat to you. Lots of people have sent me questions because they've seen on Instagram me talk about my story, how I went from having a really successful career to then losing everything in the last global recession, and then how I rebuilt myself back up. And I've got a couple of approaches to life that I thought I would share with you today, as well as just going through what happened to me. I know lots of people are having it really tough at the moment, and sometimes we need a little bit of inspiration. Perhaps we need to see somebody who's gone through something similar to help us really see the light and see a way forward and to see our way to the end game. I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. So let's have another bit of tea and let's chat. I love this part of the little castle. It's really quite intimate. Some of the other rooms are quite big. And for me, this is a perfect room to have a cup of tea with someone, have a little chat. Yes, it's quite grand surroundings, but this sofa means you can absolutely relax back in it, get yourself really comfy and have a proper conversation. And that's what we're going to have today. But I didn't grow up living in a castle. Good Lord, by no means at all. I grew up the son of Irish immigrants, Patricia and Philip, in North London. What I grew up with, though, was a real appreciation for hard work. So my father worked Monday to Friday. He then worked Saturday in a butcher's shop that I also worked in when I was a child. And he worked Sunday in the allotment. When I gave my father's speech at his funeral, I said my abiding memory of him and my mother is one of always working. Now that wasn't just because they had an absolute love of work. They were lucky in that they loved what they did. But they were all about ambition. They were all about moving themselves onwards and improving their lot in life. And I think that's become probably a little bit unfashionable now. But I'm really glad that I grew up with those lessons and that being shown to me that if you work hard, you can improve what you have. My parents, when they first bought their house, had no furniture. My father made a sofa out of orange crates. My mother gave him a packet of razor blades for Christmas, and he gave her a bar of soap. Yet many years later, their child lives in a glorious little castle in rural Wales and has a flat in Chelsea. Now, yes, some of that is down to my own hard work and also a bit of luck. But some of that also is adopting the philosophy that my parents had about moving yourself forwards. I learnt very early on the importance of having what I call an end game. This is a vision for your life, somewhere where you know you want to get to, and markers along the way that will help create the life that you want. That might be marriage, it might be children, it might be living abroad, it might be living in a particular house, but being very clear about where you want to get to at the end, and then the building blocks to create your ideal life. So my mother said that when my father and her got married, every night they would say a prayer to God and they would say, "Dear Lord, please give us the right house at the right price in the right neighbourhood." They were very clear on what they wanted so they could bring their family up in a nice, comfortable, safe neighbourhood. They weren't in Chelsea or Kensington, they were in a suburb of North London, but they were really clear about what they wanted. They knew they wanted to create a family. They knew they wanted to create a home full of love. And one of those building blocks was getting the right house. Now, luck intervened in that someone at their church knew somebody whose father was selling his house in North London. My father went round to see it, made an offer without my mother even seeing it. And they lived there basically until the day that they both died. It is a huge, huge part of my life, that house. And sometimes still when I'm in North London, I'll go and I'll drive past it. Now, Alice in Wonderland is one of my favourite books. And in that book, she asks the Cheshire Cat, where shall I go? And he asks her, where do you want to end up? And she says in her best Victorian manners, I don't very much mind. And then he replies, it doesn't really matter which path you take then. And I think it was true for Alice, and it's true in life. My parents knew exactly what path they wanted to take. I have been really clear my whole life what path I wanted to take. And if you are clear about what path you want to take, then you've got the first building block in playing the end game. Whether your end game is creating a perfect family home, whether your end game is moving to the country with someone you love and living in an historic home and generating income from that home so that you're able to stay in rural bliss. Whatever your end game is, maybe your end game is to write the great self-help book. Maybe your end game is to move to Australia and open a Pilates studio. Have an end vision. Have an idea of where you want your life to get to, and then you'll be able to identify the building blocks that will take you to achieve your end game. Now, if you want to achieve your end game, you have to play the long game. So much now, partly because of social media, in our popular culture is we want things overnight. I want to lose weight. I need to lose weight within a week. Actually, that's not true. That doesn't happen. It might happen in an advert on Instagram or TikTok, but in reality, it's not going to happen. I've lost about 1.5 stone over the last 6 months. Do you know how I've done that? By eating 300 less calories a day and going to Pilates twice a week. Every single week, I've been focused on my goal of achieving weight loss. I've gone from a 38 to a 36, and now I'm at a 34-inch waist, actually probably 33, and I'm moving down to a 32, moving towards my goal. It's a goal that will help me get to my end game of being healthy and living longer and aging well. That's absolutely one of my objectives. But it is a long game I have to play to get there. It will not happen overnight. I had a house in South Kensington, which I lost during the global recession. It was absolutely dreadful. I was living in New York. I came back to London, and as part of the recession, I lost my job and I couldn't afford to pay my mortgage, and I had to sell my house in a very distressed sale. Now, I'll talk to you in a minute about how I managed to overcome that and turn myself around. But how did I get that house? I absolutely played the long game. Again, taking it back to my heritage, I'm from Irish farmers. Land is really important to us. That was shown to me by my parents' desire to get a property, and I inherited that desire too. So I opened a savings account at 15. I did a little bit of acting, used to do some adverts. I saved that money, and when I was 23, I had enough for a deposit for my first home. I then worked like Billy-o for the next 17 years and eventually ended up with a mews house in South Kensington. It took me from 15 to 40 to get to the point where I had that mews house. And yes, I lost it, but just because I lost one house didn't mean I couldn't get it again. The long game is about making sure you take little steps every single day, every single week, every single month that moves you forward. I call that being an onwards person. Whether it's taking £1 and popping it in a savings account, whether it's saying I'm not going to have that gorgeous chocolate eclair that I saw in the village shop up the road, or I'm going to avoid that flapjack, or I'm just not going to have coffee with milk this time. Those incremental baby steps have helped me achieve what I want in my life. They've helped me to achieve weight loss over the last 6 months. And they've also helped me save up enough money, firstly, to buy my house in South Kensington, and then turn my life around when it all went south. So far, I've shared a couple of my philosophies. Having a really clear end game, where do you want to get to? Knowing that you have to play the long game to get there. And then baby steps, those incremental things you can do on a weekly, a daily, and a monthly basis that help you achieve your end goal. But sometimes you can get blown off path. It happens to all of us, and it certainly happened to me. I mentioned just quite casually and throwaway that I lost my house. It was absolutely appalling. I was living in New York, working in an agency, running a stream of business there, on top of the world. Lived at 26th and 7th in Manhattan. I could see the Empire State Building from my bedroom. I came home because my brother was sick. He had cancer. He died. I lost my job. I lost my father. I then lost my home, and I lost my mother after 14 months of being her sole carer. Now, I had an end game to get myself back a beautiful home. And during the global recession, there was no work. And I'd always been someone who'd seen the glory of work, the importance of work, and I enjoyed work, but I couldn't get a job. So I started my own business, and here I am, I hate to say 15, 16 years later, and I'm about to start semi-retirement because the business has been very successful. But how did I keep going when everything, literally my home, my job, my finances, and my family fell apart? So what I did is I realized you have to compartmentalize. If you don't compartmentalize, for me, I can get completely overwhelmed. I can live just in the moment for immediate satisfaction. I can lose sight of my end game. I can decide I'm going to go out and spend 40 quid this afternoon on lunch rather than spend 5 and put 35 in a savings account or 35 pounds to overpay my mortgage. I realized the only way I'd be able to get through all of the awful things that happened to me was by learning to compartmentalize. And the way I did that is literally when I was faced with a challenge or a struggle, if I couldn't deal with it there and then, I remembered 2 things. 1, this too will pass. Good things and bad things come and go. Important thing to remember is they go. Everything changes. I'm no longer sitting in a mews in South Kensington the night before Adam Ant moves in, completely distressed, not knowing what I'm going to do with the rest of my life, wondering how I got to the point where I lost my home. I'm now living in a beautiful little castle in rural Wales and sitting in my sitting room talking to you. Life changes. When something awful happens to you, it's really important to sit and address it. But for me, it was helpful to also say, this too will pass. This, if I put the work in, does not define who I am. And I refuse to let it define the kind of life that I'm going to live for the rest of my years on earth. Now, that is easier said than done. Absolutely. However, I'm going to show you just a little trick that I use that's really helped me compartmentalize. The second thing is I put something awful in a box. Literally, I put it in a box. 2 ways I do that. If I need to focus on something to move me onwards, but this terrible thing that's happening or this distraction is in front of me, I literally go like this. I move it aside. I would rock up to pitch to clients knowing that I'd just spoken to my brother who was in hospital having chemo. I was feeling very sad, feeling distressed, feeling concerned about what was going to happen. And I'd sit at the wheel in my car and I would go like this. I would not lose sight of it completely, but I would just pop it over there knowing it wasn't going to be helpful for me to look at it right now. Yes, I would have to bring it back, open the box and look at it at some point in the future. But if it was right in front of me now, that box of my brother's chemo, there's no way I could have gone in and won that pitch to do, for example, my first big piece of work with my own agency, which was to develop the employer brand for BP Retail. If this was in front of me, all my problems, where am I going to live? How am I going to afford food? What's going to happen with my brother? What's going to happen with his children? How are we going to tell my parents? There's no way I could have done a successful pitch. Also, in terms of putting it in the box, literally every night before I go to bed, I think through all of the things that are going on in my life, almost like a minority report. I put them out in my mind's eye on bits of paper, love a post-it note, And then I have a box that I visualize. It's gorgeous, it's red, it's lacquer, it has a key with a gorgeous tassel, and I take each piece of paper and I place it in my box. All of the challenges and stresses from the day, all of the things that are worrying me. I've got my Airbnb, for example, that I'm almost finished and I'm open for bookings, but I've got one booking. I spent nearly £100,000 on my Airbnb, but I've got one booking. Now, I can stress, and sometimes I am stressed that it's not going to rent, and that could keep me awake at night. But what I do, I take the post-it note that says Airbnb bookings, I look at it, I acknowledge it, I open my beautiful red lacquer box, I place it in, and I close the lid, because I can't solve it in bed that night. I have to believe that people will rent the Airbnb. I cannot solve that problem overnight. And so I put it in a box, and then when I put everything in a box, I lock it, I take the key out, I place it on top of the box, and that helps me drift off to sleep. I know this was a bit of a different video, but I thought I would share with you my philosophy and my approach for life. Yours might be different, and not all of these things may work for you. And yeah, I had some luck, absolutely. But I was lucky to be born to my parents. I saw the importance of hard work. I saw the importance of having an end game. I realised the importance that it doesn't happen overnight, of having a long game. And I learned through some adversity the importance of compartmentalising, popping things in a box, and realising that this too will pass. But our time together here in the sitting room has now passed. If you've got any thoughts on my approach to life, my philosophy, let me know, and I'd love to hear your own thoughts as well. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I've started to write a book, which is all about how I overcame the challenges I had when I lost my home, my family, my money, my job, and how I rebuilt my life. I'd love to know, would you buy that book? Is it worth me spending the next year, 18 months writing down all of the approaches I've had to keep me positive and keep me moving onwards? My favourite word. Let me know below. Would you buy the book? It's not available yet, but would you buy the book?